You are listening to WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station. Share your thoughts with us on social media at WHIP Radio. You can also call in, or actually, you can text us at 267-625-2447. Again, that number is 267-625-2447.
Text us, man. Come on.
Say hello.
Get on this movie talk.
Hi. If you want to suggest something for us to talk about, can't guarantee that we'll get to it, but certainly love to hear from you. Jordan Hallerman, Andrew Kent, James Mason in the studio once again, talking movies like every week.
Yes, sir.
Yes, absolutely.
Gentlemen, how were your weekends?
Well, let's see. You know, I can't even say it on air because it would make me look
because it was
terrible.
that good.
Good or bad?
Oh, it was fantastic.
All right, that's good.
Fantastic.
James, good or bad?
I had a good weekend. I can't complain.
Sweet. There we go.
Jordan?
The Bills won. It was a good weekend.
Oh.
The weekend itself was good in general, but the Bills winning was also good.
I find it funny that Jordan didn't bring up the Bills game the week before.
All right.
Very selective viewing for you.
Yeah.
It's not selective. It's not something I need to talk about.
Oh,
Wait,
yeah.
who do they-
Unless it's this week.
Wait. Who did the Bills play this past weekend?
We beat the Redskins.
Man, you guys got to start getting some better quality wins.
Well, we're playing the Browns this weekend, but this is not a sports show. I digress.
Before we get too sidetracked.
Before I get too sidetracked, I keep talking about the Bills forever. This is a movie show after all. But one thing I did do this weekend, Friday, took myself to see Terminator Dark Fate. James, I know you said you saw it as well.
Yes, I saw the same movie, but I saw it on Tuesday, yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, why go to class when you can skip it and see Terminator Dark Fate?
Did you see it at the AMC on campus as well? Or
Yes, I saw the Pearl Theater.
okay.
Yeah. saw the AMC.
Well, you still call it the Pearl Theater.
That's what if I Google it, it's called the Pearl Theater. I want to call it the
really?
Yeah, it's still called the Pearl Theater. So I didn't know if the
It shows
AMC was
up
the
as
outdated
both,
one. Yeah, but yeah, I saw it at that one, off Broad and Cecil.
I have a story to tell about it afterwards. What did you think about the movie?
Overall,
Yeah.
it's okay. In the shortest way, it's okay. I enjoyed it much more than I expected to. I thought I was going to be bored through it. I thought I was going to be irritated through it, but it entertained me. So I will give it that. It was entertaining. It was fun to watch. It didn't feel too bad. But no, I didn't think it was a good movie. What about you?
I guess I was pretty positive on this movie. I liked it a lot. I mean,
what'd you like about it?
I think the movie didn't try to be something that it wasn't.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. The action I thought was solid. If anything, you got plenty of action. I think they could have trimmed it down a little bit in that department, but that was fine. The script and the story were a lot better and funnier than I expected, actually. Especially when Arnold Schwarzenegger comes into the film.
Yeah.
He added, I think his arc or his character was one of the better done in the film, which I was certainly not expecting because I just didn't really think much about that going in. I think the cast does a solid job. The core four of Linda Hamilton, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mackenzie Davis, and then whoever plays
Denny or whatever.
Denny.
I can't remember her name, but she's a newcomer.
The actress is a newcomer. I think Gabriel Luna also does a pretty good job as the villain.
The main Terminator. Well, the bad Terminator.
Or antagonist. But he doesn't really... That's not really acting. That's just more just him like physically being imposing. But I mean, look, for a franchise that has been struggling to get a victory in terms of a quality movie, they've pretty much put out 2 duds in a row, and nobody really was expecting much from this. I was pleasantly surprised. I think if you're just looking for a good time, it's certainly worth a watch.
Yeah, as far as, I hate to degrade it this much. As far as mindless action movies are concerned, it's fine. You can certainly do worse.
You see, I didn't think it was that mindless in terms of the action. Like, I thought it was... I feel like some people with this movie, in their response to it, when it comes to the positives, it's either it was better, it wasn't awful, but I feel like people aren't giving credit to this movie for the fact that it actually is. Like, if we'd just gotten this movie, it reminds me a lot of The Force Awakens to some degree, in the sense that it's trying to reinvent the franchise after something that wasn't all too positive, and I've heard that comparison a few times. But
if I had to compare it to anything, I'd compare it to the new Halloween movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which I didn't get a chance to see it. I really wanted to, but unfortunately I wasn't in the country at the time, so I couldn't see it. But it does the same thing where it ignores all the previous sequels. Like, it ignores everything after Terminator 3. So, Salvation,
that actually is
Genesis.
a good comparison.
Yeah, so it does that. I haven't seen the new Halloween to compare it as far as that's concerned, but this one, I had very mixed feelings for it. Again, like, I was at least happy because watching it, I didn't feel bored or distracted. Like, I enjoyed it enough that I could watch it as a movie. Overall, like, especially after I was leaving the theater and I was thinking about it, I had a lot of problems with it that I didn't have while watching it. And I guess that's a good thing on the filmmaking perspective. When I could sit there and when I'm engrossed in it, I don't think about it.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I left, I'm like, oh, well, there was this. And then, an hour later, I'm like, oh, there was also this too. And then, 20 minutes later, I'm like, oh, there was this too. So there was a lot afterwards. And now that it's been a day since I saw it that I didn't like, or there was a couple of plot holes that after I thought of, like, just kind of annoyed me. I don't know. I don't want to spoil it. Even I kind of want to, because, and this is the hypocritical thing for me, if it's a good movie, I never want to spoil it, and I want to reveal so little. And if it's a movie I'm not crazy about, I'm very eager to spoil it and say why I didn't like it. But I will not spoil this one. But what did you think of the opening scene? Because that's kind of the controversial dividing point between fans scene.
I don't know how to describe my thoughts on this without leaning one way or another.
Did you think it was a good decision or a bad decision?
I didn't care.
See,
I also knew kind of that it was supposed to happen, so it wasn't a big deal. I don't think it matters. I think anybody's upset over it is just pulling for straws.
Yeah. I won't say I was upset about it. I also knew it was going to happen because so many people have been talking about it, and I didn't see the movie soon enough. So when I walked in, I knew it was going to happen. I wasn't mad about it the way a lot of people were, but I also thought it was unnecessary. At least where the plot develops and when you think about it, and it doesn't affect the plot at all. It feels like they just kind of threw it in there to make news.
They could have done it a different way, certainly.
Yeah, they definitely could have.
It wasn't my biggest problem with the movie, and I didn't really have a major flaw. I don't think it has, for me at least, it didn't have something that really detracted from the viewing. The only thing that I really noticed is that the pacing. The first half of the movie moves really fast. Like, maybe the first third is nonstop, and then when you get to that last...
last action sequence.
Well, the last third, maybe, of the movie, when you think it's going to wrap up, it kind of, it keeps on, going, if that makes any sense.
No. I had the same issue. It's basically what you feel like it's the climax of the movie.
And then,
it's when they get to the, they're meeting up to buy a weapon, and then the bad guys track them down, and it's like, all right, this is going to be it. This is going to be the final showdown.
Yeah.
And then they go to an airplane, and it's like, okay, this is going to be the final showdown. And then it goes, to the Hoover Dam, and it's like, oh, this is the final.
I don't want to get too...
I'm just setting locations.
Oh,
but
I know,
just
but even then, that's still, I feel like...
Oh, yeah, there's the Hoover Dam in it. Sorry if you're a Hoover Dam fan.
No, but in my case, I feel like if you know that it doesn't stop, then you're it's not fair to someone who's watching.
Maybe. I don't mean to spoil it, but I had the same problem with, and it was the same problem I have with all the Transformer movies, where it's like you can do action on top of action and build it up and make it intense. But this one, especially in the last 20 minutes, it just felt like it kept going and it kept going, and I got irritated with it too. That was when I was. That didn't
irritate me though.
I was just getting bored. I'm like, all right, wrap it up. They're just fighting him, and then they move to a different location. They fight him and think he's dead, and then they move to a different location. And I'm like, all right, get on with it. What's the point of drawing it out?
Look, I think with this type of movie, you either are gonna like it or you're not gonna like it. If you want to go for a good time, you show up, and that's what you're gonna get. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think it might even crack my top 15.
Really?
Probably top 15, maybe top 10. Just because of the fact that this year, I feel like there's been a fair amount of disappointments. And this movie, it wasn't too long. It was only 2 hours.
Yeah, they at least kept it short. I was glad they kept it at 2 hours.
While there's a lot of action, it doesn't suffer from being too long, if that makes any sense.
No, it doesn't. And I will, if I can get to the pros and cons, at least what I thought about it. But,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I thought the acting was actually much better than it needed to be. It's not awards-worthy acting, but I thought at least Linda Hamilton and Arnold were going to phone it in. If you watch any new Bruce Willis movies or, any new Jean-Claude Van Damme movies or, any of those, the old action stars, they're just phoning it in with everything they do. And you could tell they're just doing it for the paycheck. And I assumed, this being this, decades-old franchise, they were going to do the same thing. But no, Linda Hamilton's actually trying to act in this, which impressed me. It's not great, but she's truly, doing her best. And same with the rest of the cast. So I commend that. Arnold's still awesome. as far as I'm concerned. Like, I can watch Arnold do anything. Like, even in this movie, he's talking about, like, drapes at one point, and I was smiling the whole time.
I was going to
like,
say that was one of my favorite lines in the movie. Or just that section, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, once Arnold, and I agreed with you, once Arnold got introduced, I liked it better. But I also, like, Arnold as the Terminator for me is a Terminator movie, so I love seeing him play the Terminator.
I think once he's introduced, whenever he's on screen, I think the movie benefits from it.
It does, and what you were saying earlier, his whole, I won't go into detail about this, but his
progression.
His progression, but his purpose, like why he's in the movie and his plot arc, I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
like why he exists in this time.
Well done.
I liked it so much I almost wanted it to be more of a focus. Like I thought that was a much more interesting idea than the rest of the movie. And for the beginning of the movie, like, it's not bad, but it reminded me, like, it's virtually the same plot as the first 3 Terminators.
That's fair.
Like, there's not a whole lot different. And so that kind of disappointed me because they leave a lot of it ambiguous for a while, and then they reveal, like, oh, these are who these characters are, and I'm like, oh, well, all right, so it's the same thing. Like, there's nothing new. Yeah, question.
Yeah, so you mentioned how it's basically the same exact thing as the first 3 Terminators in terms of plot.
Yeah, which it is.
That's one thing that I get so frustrated with all these franchises. I was talking about earlier in my podcast. So the Terminator series is pretty much the only major action franchise from the 80s that I have yet to watch. I watched First Blood, which is the Rambo franchise.
Yeah, I love First Blood.
I did check out First Blood. I watched Predator. I've seen most of those movies now, except for
they got 1.5 good movies in the Predator franchise.
Yeah. I've seen every one except for the second one, which I don't ever plan on seeing, obviously. And then I also watched the most of the Alien movies. I've seen Aliens.
The other James Cameron franchise from the 80s.
I thought Aliens was a terrific movie, but you cannot ignore the fact that when you look at the newest Alien movies.
Prometheus and Covenant.
Alien Covenant, very similar movies. Not much changes there from the original Alien films. And then you look at Rambo, pretty much all the same exact thing.
After the first one, repeats itself.
It literally, with all these franchises from the action, in terms of the action genre from the 80s, stemming from that time period, now you look at Terminator, it just seems like they keep bashing over the same ideas. They can't think of anything else creatively. Do you guys think the reason for this is because they're afraid if they don't change up their formula, they don't do something differently, then people won't go see these movies from the 80s and they won't have that nostalgia anymore?
I don't know what you think, but that's a good question. I thought about this, and especially with the James Cameron franchises, because Terminator and Aliens, and I remember talking to my uncle about this, with Aliens and Terminator, the first 2 movies basically covered, in our opinion, all you could do with those plots. So, the first Alien, what is it? It's a group of coal miners fighting one alien. So what's the second one? All right, let's throw in a bunch of aliens. So it's a bunch of, like, it's almost Vietnam soldiers fighting a bunch of aliens. But that's all you can do with it. It's like, all right, we had one alien, and then we had a million of them. How do you do a third movie? Because you covered that. And it's the same thing with Terminator. The first one, you got Linda Hamilton fighting one Terminator. And then the second one, it's like, all right, well, we'll flip it. We'll make the bad Terminator good and introduce a bad one who's liquid metal. All right, where do you go for the third one? You're out of ideas. And so I think James Cameron's really good at sequels because he did the second Aliens and he did the first 2 Terminators, and they were good sequels. But beyond that, when you try and spin a franchise out of it, there's like, you've already milked it for all it's worth. You got one good movie out of it and then a really good second movie out of it, but you can't do a third, you can't do a fourth, you can't do a fifth. Like, it's not meant to last 40 years. And
you can say the same exact thing even about the Jurassic World franchise.
Yeah.
The first and second Jurassic World are literally the same exact thing, and I'm sure the third one, oh, wow, now we're just going to have all the dinosaurs wreak havoc over the entire country instead of just being on this island. Now they can kill people in New York City or Chicago or Philadelphia, whatever. It's just so annoying. I want them to stop making these movies, do something differently, for God's sake.
Well, it was the same thing with the first Jurassic Park. They go to an island, and it was like, all right, there's dinosaurs on an island that are wreaking havoc. It's like, oh, that's kind of exciting. That's cool. The special effects are amazing. The second one, all right, the dinosaurs escaped the island. Now they're in New York. It's like, okay. Third one, where do you go from there? Well, we already did a major population in an island, so, like, there's nothing left for them to do.
Just have them go back there.
Yeah, so just make them back on the island, and then the fourth and the fifth one are back on. Yeah, it's the same thing, and so that's the problem with the franchise. Not that they're bad, but there's only so many stories you can milk from that.
Yeah, right.
And so I did like the 6th Terminator, the new one that we just saw. Certainly, I think what benefits it a lot, and we've talked about this previous weeks, the last Terminator sequels, the last 2 especially, have been especially bad. So as long as this wasn't bad, it would look good. I still had problems with it. There was a couple plot holes, especially about the cell phones. Like, I don't know if you remember
Oh, I remember. That's a
I don't
minor
think
thing though.
it's minor, but it kind of annoyed me because it's like it's both minor and a major plot point.
I don't know.
Well, it was just
I
like
just like once you're getting that far into it, it's like I don't know.
well, like I don't think this is a spoiler, but cut me off if it is or if we're running out of time. But like the main character has a cell phone, and Lyndall Hamilton says like, "Oh, do you have your phone on you?" She's like, "Yeah," and she throws it out a window, and she's like, "They use that to track you. Why would you carry it?" It's like, okay. And then like 20 minutes later, they're talking to Lyndall Hamilton, and they're like, "How'd you get this information?" She's like, "Oh, I get text on my phone." And I'm like, "You have a cell phone this whole time?" Like after that whole spiel about how bad it was, and you still carry one on you.
Well, in
and
her
then like
case,
shortly,
though, she was saying they're tracking the girl who's being hunted,
yeah,
not her.
but then like a minute later, she's talking to the person through her cell phone, and they're like, "Oh, you were using my phone to track you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course they were. They just talked about this, and you were worried about the same thing." And like the whole premise, like the Terminators, why they're still being sent back in time. Like if you and I could elaborate this some more, but it's spoiling it. But like the whole reason why they're being sent back in time, and what they do with this, like it doesn't change. Like the whole plot of the movie doesn't affect why they're being sent back in time, and what they try to set up at the beginning doesn't affect that. And like stuff like I guess you could call it nitpicking, but stuff like that annoys me. And it's also like it's only there to have this plot, and the plot's the exact same as the first two Terminator movies. So it's like, all right, you're kind of jumping through hoops and bending over backwards and making plot holes to make this plot work, and the plot's no different than the ones before. So like, yeah, of course I'm going to get irritated by it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think
I clearly one of us cared way more about this than the other one, but
I just think that I had a good time, and
oh, I had a great time watching it. It's terrific fun. It's just stupid.
I think poking holes and trying to like point out the flaws in a movie like this is just like
pointless.
Yeah. No pun intended.
No, yeah.
I don't know. I just think if you go in knowing what you're gonna get, then you will be satisfied. And I think that this movie does deserve some credit for the fact that it's taking away the previous sequels. This is where I'm going to wrap up before we get a break.
Yeah, go ahead.
But taking away the previous sequels that weren't great, the movie is still a solid movie.
Oh, yeah. Arnold can still throw a punch.
Not just that. I just feel like the way it's directed, the way it's written, like it's competently made and solid. It's a solid movie. And I feel like anybody who's trying to I have to carefully select my word here, to trash the movie, I don't know. I think some of it's warranted, but also some of it might be just a little bit much because it's sort of the easy thing to do.
It is an okay movie. I don't want to trash it. I did like the movie.
It wasn't you. I just mean some. Yeah. I've seen some critics being like, "Oh, this was an awful movie," but it's not an awful movie. It's just not. It's not. It's not meant to be.
It's not the first two.
It's probably like Rambo Last Blood for me. How I felt like it was basically a much worse version of the original, but I still thought it was entertaining enough and probably better than the sequels that came right before it.
All right. On that note, we are going to take our first commercial break. We'll be back in just a bit. You're listening to Real Talk on WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station. Hello and welcome back to Real Talk on WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station. Share your thoughts with us on social media at WHIP Radio. You can also text in at 267-625-2447. Before the break, James, Andrew, and I were talking about Terminator. I being Jordan, James and Andrew being James Mason, Andrew Kent. Forgot to introduce you guys after the break.
Oh, it's fine.
Thanks, buddy.
But now Andrew and James, you guys both got to see some other movies over the weekend. One which we've talked about on the show briefly, and one which we haven't. So
yes. So I'll mention mine. I have not gone to the theater since I saw Zombieland? Yeah, Double Tap. That was the last one I saw in theaters. But since then, yeah, it's just nothing really interested me. I know the wide release the weekend before Halloween was like Black and Blue. Who the heck cares about that one? And then this weekend was Terminator. And I didn't want to see that one. So I was saving it up for this upcoming weekend, which we'll get to, I'm sure, eventually in the show. But instead of going anywhere this past weekend to see Terminator or anything else, I decided to sit at home Friday afternoon. Only got about 5 hours of sleep the night before because I woke up early. But I watched on Netflix the movie called The King, which stars Timothée Chalamet alongside other great actors like Joel Edgerton, Robert Pattinson, Ben Mendelsohn, even the kid from Game of Thrones, Tommen, he was in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And even Sean Harris, who we know from both Mission Impossible Fallout and Prometheus.
Oh,
yeah, he was in this movie. I will say that the only really problem I had with the movie was that the fact that the first half was pretty darn slow, which is kind of a big problem because you if you were gonna get invested into a movie, then you expect it to be at least pretty fast paced right out of the gate. But it takes a little while for this movie to get its gears rolling. By the second half, though, it's just the second half's really good because you build up to so much, and there's a huge payoff towards the end. You kind of know what's coming because, after all, this is a movie that takes place back in the day when there were kingdoms and knights and kings and all those kinds of things in England and France. So you pretty much expect to know where this movie's going to go, and you hope it goes in that direction. And if you know what I'm alluding to, you expect there's going to be some giant battles going on.
Well, do you mind saying what's the premise of the movie? At least the bare minimum.
Basically, what the premise is that Timothée Chalamet, he plays King Henry V. His name is Hal, and his father is King Henry IV. He passes away, so then Hal takes over. His dad was kind of a tyrant. He was very malicious, was always targeting France. Was trying to take out all the other people, all the other kingdoms across Europe. And now that Hal is now king, he looks to try to make amends, but at the same time, there's something going on behind the scenes. You can tell that he feels like France is also, because of what his father did, he feels that France is targeting him. So he pretty much declares war against France. And, really the whole movie is about him dealing with not only the politics going on in England and what it's like to be the new king after his father, trying to do better things than what his father did as king, and trying to make up for the terrible things that his father did. Not only is it that, but is also awaiting this upcoming battle between England and France. And there's a lot going on with his character that he has to deal with, but that's pretty much what the movie does. It really focuses heavily on King Henry V and just him adjusting to becoming king and making up a strategy to see what is the best decision possible and what would be the best moves for this kingdom going forward. And you can tell that he definitely develops as a character throughout the movie from the beginning to the end, completely different.
How the performance-wise? Because I'm not a big Timothée Chalamet fan.
Not a big fan. I mean, I thought
I'll have the unpopular opinion on that one. But how does he in this movie?
So I thought he was actually amazing in this movie. I thought him and people apparently were saying on Twitter as a meme that Robert Pattinson. I thought he was awesome as the Dolphin of France. He's pretty much the movie's main villain. He was, I thought, exceptional in the movie. Very good. I really like Robert Pattinson. It was. The accent, I'm sure, was probably not great, but
what kind of an accent? Because he is British, but
he was trying to do a French accent.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So
he did a pretty decent Brooklyn accent in Good Times. So he might, but was it good?
I mean, I just really liked him. When he came on the screen, I was like, I'm glued now. Like this guy's awesome as a villain. I want to see Robert Pattinson do this more often. So just seeing him in a smaller movie role like this was really cool, but at the same time, it's more on a larger scale because of what's at stake and what this movie is. This movie probably could have been, had it been given to a big director. Imagine where this movie probably would have ended up. I figured if some huge director was directing it, it was given a huge, even bigger budget, then I think it probably would have been in major theaters all across the country, closer to Christmas. But yeah, I mean, I thought all the performances were great, and yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this movie. I think the first half is slow, but the rest of the movie makes up for that.
All right.
And then James, you mentioned that you'd seen Jojo Rabbit recently.
I just saw Jojo Rabbit and Irishman. Which one do you want to talk about, Jojo or the Irishman?
You can talk about both real quick. I mean, I mentioned I love Jojo Rabbit. What did you think of it?
I really like Jojo Rabbit, actually. I thought it was very funny. I thought it was very touching. I liked how it dealt with the very serious issues. They do, like, you could say you have some issues with it, but it reminded me of Life is Beautiful and taking the exact same very serious, touchy subject matter and trying to find a hopeful message around it, trying to find an upbeat message around it. I thought the performances around the board were really good. I thought Scarlett Johansson was really good. I thought the two kids were really good. I can't think of their names. Sam Rockwell once again proved to me that he can do no wrong.
Yes, he was.
As much as I wanted to hate Sam Rockwell as a Nazi, in the end, he still has kind of that character redeeming moment, and I'm like, I can't hate him. He's too good. Yeah, I thought it was funny. I love what they did. There's like small details in the directing by, and I'm going to mispronounce his name again, so you just cut me off.
Taika
Waititi, who also made a very good Adolf Hitler. I loved his imagining of like what a 10-year-old would think Adolf Hitler is like as his imaginary friend. That got some of the biggest laughs out of me. That and I can't say the other part, but There's like some small parts in the storytelling, like the thing they do with shoes and shoelaces, how they'll focus on character shoes,
Oh, yes.
and that the way that pays off, I like completely caught me off guard. Was a complete gut blow. Like it's tremendous storytelling, and yeah, it was a really good movie. I enjoyed it way more than I did, and it choked me up. I love the German covers of all the pop songs.
Yes.
Like they got a German version of David Bowie, and they got a German version of, I think they do Thundercat Newman in it, but that might have just been the trailer. The only one I remember they didn't do a German cover of was Tom Waits, and I was really happy they left Tom Waits be.
It's been a little while, and I don't remember the music too well. I remember the cover of David Bowie, but this is easily my favorite movie of the year.
It's one of them. It definitely made me feel the happiest, I think, and this is a weird comparison. It's the second happiest the movies made me feel this year. The first was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I could explain that later, but it's not worth going into.
Satisfied in that particular movie.
Yeah, well, I love that movie. I saw it 5 times, but I have a problem, but.
Well, not even that. It's just a long movie to sit through 5 times.
Yeah, it's a really long movie. And speaking of long movies, if you have anything else to say about JoJo,
I just think I cannot praise this movie enough. I love it so much.
It's got a spot in my heart. I get why people have a problem with it, and then if I think back to the movie, there's not a single thing I can think of that I didn't like about it. It's just it's a very feel-good movie, which feels weird about the subject matter to call something feel-good, but it is.
I just think it's an important movie.
It's a very important movie. I like the message of it, the message of love and hope, conquering evil, and all that stuff. And the performances all around the board are good, especially by like the lead
child actors.
Yeah, the child actors. The Jewish girl's I think 19. The
Thomas
boy
and Mackenzie, I think.
Thomas and Mackenzie's 19. I forget the name of the main character, the actual JoJo, but he's like 10 or 11.
The main actor's name is, if it pops up.
But they do a very, very good job. They don't feel like kids.
Roman Griffin Davis is the name of JoJo.
Not that I would have any way to correct you if you were wrong, but
Archie Yates also deserves praise. He plays a character called Yorkie, who is JoJo's friend, and whenever he shows up on screen, he adds some much needed levity.
Given again, it's a movie about World War II and the Holocaust, but
then real quick, Irishman too.
Irishman, yeah.
Not Irishman the sequel, but Irishman as well.
The Irishman as well, yeah. Speaking of long movies, The Irishman is the newest Martin Scorsese movie. It is the two big things about it. People are talking about now. One is the runtime. It is a 3.5-hour movie. The other thing is that the digital de-aging. So, in short, this movie is about Frank. I forget his last. I want to say Costello, but that's from The Departed.
I will look it up.
Well,
you can use the
Costello,
actor names. If that's easier.
yeah. All right, so Robert De Niro plays, and this is a true story. It's based off his deathbed memoir. Robert De Niro plays a hitman for the mob in
Frank Sheeran.
Frank Sheeran, who's a low-level hitman for the mob in Philly. He befriends Russo Buffalino, who is played by Joe Pesci, and they kind of form this friendship early on in like the 60s. Frank starts working for Russo. He rises up through the mob, and the big thing about this story is about an hour into the movie, they get introduced to none other than Jimmy Hoffa, played by Al Pacino. And the big thing about this memoir, the reason they adapted it, was Frank claims to be the man who killed Jimmy Hoffa, who, if you've never heard of him, he was the leader of the Teamsters in the 70s, and in 1975, he disappeared without a trace. His murder, his disappearance is still unsolved. And this movie claims to have solved that, not solve it, but reveal what happened to Jimmy Hoffa. So first off, it's Martin Scorsese, and his 3 leads are Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and Joe Pesci. He's never worked with Pacino, but he's worked with Pesci and De Niro plenty of times before. And it, of course, looking back on their previous collaborations, that it's comparing itself to Raging Bull, Casino, Goodfellas. This movie more than well earns its own. For 3.5 hours, it blows by. The performances across the board are incredible. It's very sad, and that's what surprised me, because Martin Scorsese at this point in his career, this and Silence are very introspective movies. So it's him kind of reflecting on his life. Silence was a reflection of his belief in Christianity, his belief in a higher power. This one was his reflection on the mob, which he's famous for, because, as I mentioned, Goodfellas, Casino, Departed. He's famous for dealing with the mob, and he's gotten in a lot of trouble for glorifying that, especially recently with Wolf of Wall Street. But here, he kind of strips that back. He shows the ugliness to it, which he did before, but there's a real sort of grittiness and unexciting quality about this. Like, there's nothing very glossy about it. There's nothing very exciting about what they do. And then you start to see Frank's sins, what he does over his career and what weighs on him, all the bad things he has to do. And as they say with everyone in the mob, you either die young when you're in the mob or you live long to, like, just die of old age and have to live with what you did. Frank was one of those people who had to live with what he did, and you have to see all the terrible things he did. And that last half hour, this isn't a spoiler, but the last half hour is Frank just getting old, watching all his friends die, and realizing that all he's done in his life he can never make amends for. And it's very, very powerful stuff. It's very quietly powerful. It's very well acted, but it really resonates because I've never seen that coda in any mob movie before. Maybe sort of The Godfather 3, but it wasn't that well done. Never in a Scorsese movie. And I know this isn't Scorsese's last movie, but it certainly feels like it. Like if he were to say the other day he's not going to direct anything anymore, I would believe it. It's a phenomenal movie. It's one of the best he's ever made, and that's in a career of great movies. I'm done talking.
So in other words, for Robert De Niro, this movie's a step up from Dirty Grandpa.
Oh my God, yeah. By a hair, just a notch above Dirty Grandpa.
Oh my God, that's good to know.
Don't hate on Dirty Grandpa, by the way.
And it's so great. Joe Pesci is back, and it's so great. This is one of the best Joe Pesci performances, and I'm glad he's not getting hit in the head with a tin can by what's his name from Home Alone. He's great, and it's so good. Macaulay Culkin. It's good to see him in a return to form. Pacino's great as always. Everybody's amazing in it. Go see this movie when it comes out on Netflix or in the theaters, especially if you can see it in theaters. I'm done.
And go watch Dirty Grandpa because that movie gets way too much hate.
Because it's bad.
It's not a bad movie.
It's horrible.
Zac Efron comedies are enjoyable even when they're bad, at least in my opinion. Mike and Davey Wedding Dates, underappreciated. I will stand by that movie.
He's gonna mute my mic if I speak against it.
No, I won't. On that note, we're gonna take our final commercial break. We'll be back in just a bit. You are listening to Real Talk on WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station. Hello and welcome back to Real Talk on WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station. Share your thoughts with us on social media at WHIP Radio. Jordan Hallerman, James Mason, Andrew Kent, talking movies in the studio for the last segment of this Wednesday night.
So sad.
It's been a good one.
Yeah.
It really has.
I mean, didn't expect that dead silence after me, but
we reviewed a lot of movies today. Now we're going to talk some news.
Fun.
The biggest headline of the week probably came out today. It was that James Dean is going to be recreated using CGI for a new Vietnam War movie. The movie is called Finding Jack. I'm just looking at this Hollywood Reporter article right here that was written by Alex Rittman. It says the cultural icon who died in 1955 will return to the screen via CGI using actual footage and photos in the film Finding Jack.
I like how they have to explain who James Dean is, the culture icon of 1956, as if no one knew who James Dean was. Like, oh, which guy? Oh, yeah, the guy from Rebel Without a Cause.
Crazy how he was only 24 years old and became such an icon back then.
Only 3 movies. Only did 3 movies, and yet he's still, remembered in pop culture forever. Yep.
Well, I do know with this news that some people are very upset.
I was going to say,
some
Twitter's
people,
not happy.
Yeah, not at all.
I kind of have mixed feelings about it, more towards the negative, but I'm curious what you guys think first.
Listen, I don't necessarily think it's a great idea, but I do want to see what they do, and if it looks realistic, if it looks like crap, then it's probably a terrible idea. But I don't know if it's the smartest idea because no matter what, you're going to receive so much backlash. People are probably going to think, oh, man, you're basically just completely taking a dump on this guy's legacy. You're not doing any respect for him. Just leave it be. We don't need somebody else voicing him or anything like that. And I can understand those claims. The only reason I'm actually interested is just because I want to see how they bring him back to life, if it looks realistic, and if they can pull it off.
Yeah, I'm curious how it looks, but I don't think they should do it, and I'm kind of against that. Well, for starters, when they've brought... This isn't the first time they've made a computer-generated actor who has passed away in a movie. Like, the first example I can think of is Rogue One, where they had... not Peter Cushing, it was...
It was Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing, yeah.
That was...
Yeah. But it made sense, at least, for them to use him there because it's set during the first Star Wars movie, and he was in the first Star Wars movie, so they needed that character. Whereas... This is just...
and I'm reading off the quote here. There's a lot of things that really stood out in this article, which is alarming. But they said... We searched high and low for the perfect actor to portray the role of Rogan, which has some extremely complex character arcs. After months of research, we decided on James Dean.
Yeah. Oh, the guy who hasn't acted in a movie in the last 60 years.
There are so many actors in the business today, but we decided to take the one that's been dead for 50 years.
Which makes me feel bad for, I wonder
years.
I wonder how many actors auditioned for this part beforehand and then had to get the news they picked a guy who died before you were born. And that he has nothing to do with this plot. it's not like it's a tie into any of the movies Dean did in his very short, sadly short career. So it's like there is no reason, there is no purpose to bring him in other than attention.
Yeah, and
this isn't good attention.
It's really just a publicity thing at this point. And also, they've made it clear that the family is aware of this, and it says the family views this as his fourth movie, a movie he never got to make. We do not intend to let his fans down.
They're still a family.
No, that's dark. Yeah.
I mean, it's unlikely any of the people still alive really remember him anyway. Like, why would they? If somebody's talking about my great grandfather, I'm like, okay, like I don't really care what you do with him because I never met him. I don't have any personal connection. The family, I mean, I get it. They should have a right to say something, but at the same time, like, I don't care what the family has to think or say or anything because they probably barely knew the guy.
Well, they're the ones who owns the right to it. If for a legal reason they have to get a bio, I'm thinking like, what's the money they're getting paid off that? Because the whole thing feels like a cash grab. Nothing feels sincere. Nothing feels justified. It just feels like they're doing this whole thing for money and attention, and that's very despicable to me.
Jordan, what do you think?
I think that actually one of the things that stood out to me, which is what I was going to say, is there's a quote at the end where it says, the filmmakers are now hoping that the CGI technology used to bring Dean back to life on screen could soon be deployed on other well-known figures. And the quote is, this opens up a whole new opportunity for many of our clients who are no longer with us, says Mark Rossler, CEO of CMG Worldwide, which represents Dean's family alongside more than 1,700 entertainment, sports, music, and historical personalities, including the likes of Burt Reynolds, Christopher Reeve, Ingrid Bergman, Neil Armstrong, Bette Davis, and Jack Lemmon.
Neil Armstrong, yeah, because all the movies he did.
This is something that troubles me greatly, just for the sheer fact that I do not want to see a new trend of movies being sold as we're bringing an actor back from the dead to put on another performance. Like it's not the same as I'd say a hologram for a concert, which still is, I think, a little bit of a weird concept, but. This just feels like a. I don't know.
I agree with you. I want to hear what you say.
Term, but
I agree with you.
I just feel like I think this is a trend that I don't want to see happen.
I was gonna say
it just seems unnecessary.
Man, I mean, if you were gonna do this, you should have done it in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Sharon Tate. Just recast Sharon Tate as Sharon Tate.
I feel like that.
I mean, that's different. If you
cast material, that's a little touchy, just because. Of
speaking of Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, right.
Because he was supposed to be George Swan. But no, I don't like that. I don't like the fact that they're recreating deceased actors as their young selves in new movies that they have no approval over and are no longer. It
just seems in poor taste.
It does seem like in poor taste, and it's in such poor taste that I would call it a cash grab.
For sure.
Yeah,
I think.
And it feels like nothing else, and it's exploitive, and if I'm not pronouncing that right, and it leaves a sour taste in my mouth, and I don't like it, and I don't want them to do it, and I want technology to progress. Like, I like the whole de-aging thing, but I don't think you should use it to an extent where you can de-age someone who's dead.
I think de-aging is one thing, but recreating a person, like, in terms of the technology, it says that they're going to be using full-body CGI, which means I think they're going to construct him as a CGI person and then use another person to voice him. This is another actor will voice him, but I'm not sure if they're going to use a body double and then put his face, or if it'll just be a CGI body and CGI creation.
I assume they'll do the body thing like they do with Avatar and Tron, where they have someone in a green suit with dots all over them, and they just kind of act out the part, or like what Andy Serkis always ends up doing, like something like that, and then they have to CGI over it.
Well, because I know Gemini Man in particular was full CGI. Will Smith. That was not like a body double or anything.
Well, that was what is it? The de-aging. They didn't use de-aging for
They made
Gemini
a
Man?
CGI, completely CGI.
Wouldn't it have been easier just to de-age him?
Possibly, but
it
I
probably
guess
would have looked so much better too.
Because you already have Will Smith in the movie.
I don't know. I'm not angry, but
yeah,
I just think this is it's a slippery slope that we shouldn't be going down, and by we I mean the industry.
And the other thing is, I just looked at the directors of this movie potentially.
This is not a big movie, by the way. This is,
who's directing it? I'm
literally people I've never heard of. They've only directed shorts. So
the fact that the family must be getting a lot of money for this.
I'm thinking the family either needs money or they're getting a butt ton to not complain about it. With all due respect to the Dean family.
If this is going to be a small movie, then how the heck are they going to make it look good without a big budget?
Oh, they're not.
I don't know.
If they don't have a big budget, because
it says they're targeting a Veterans Day 2020 release, which means this movie we'll find out how this is going to be.
Oh my God! If they could barely make Sonic the Hedgehog look good over that time period, how the heck are they going to make James
Don't
Dean
hate Sonic.
looked good.
The Sonic thing wasn't that bad.
But I'm
Okay.
saying, like, The Irishman, like, is famous, and I saw the de-aging. At first, it's a bit jarring, but you get used to it, and that's as good as the de-aging technology has ever looked. And The Irishman is Scorsese, and he worked
just
with
a lot of money. It's a big budget.
Yeah, they had a $159 million budget for this. This is some no one who's got less than a budget for that, and they have to recreate someone, not de-age them, completely recreate them. It's not going to look good. Like, how can the family approve of this? It's like
I still see the
this
point.
is not gonna help the legacy of James Dean, as if that needed any help at all. Like, if you can have as an actor, aside from dying young, like, this is the greatest legacy you can have as an actor. Did 3 movies, was Oscar nominated for 2 of them.
But what do you guys think is really the main point of having something like this done? Do you think by doing this, their mindset is, we can get people to buy tickets because...
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
it's
it's
James
cash
Dean.
grab.
There's no reason why they wouldn't. You could easily get, if they wanted an actor who is living. I hate that I have to use that comparison, but if that's what they wanted to do, they could. I'm sure they could find someone to fit this role. It is not,
like I was saying before, they could have just had James Franco do it. Who's
that James Franco might be a little bit much.
No, but I mean, he looks like James Dean. They could have found a lookalike.
If your goal was, and this is not, does not seem to me, the movie is not based off of an existing thing where you would need James
Well, that's
Dean.
what I'm saying, yeah.
They just wanted something that was flashy and sold the movie, because this movie is not very big, so it gives it something.
Yeah. The thing is, like, it's not like
It's
it's not like it's the same situation where in Star Wars with Carrie Fisher, she passed away. You kind of need her for Episode 9, so you're going to use some footage to bring her back to life. Of course,
they didn't use, from what I can tell,
or
they
like
just
Philip
used
Seymour
footage
Hoffman
that they hadn't used.
Yeah, or like Philip Seymour Hoffman for the last 2 Hunger Games, where he passed away before they could finish his role, so they had to computer generate a couple things.
Yeah,
but that I get. This, like, and also the other thing, if we got time, it feels like it devalues what an actor can do in their lifetime. Because they do all these roles, and it's almost like saying, like, oh, we don't even need you alive. We can just computer generate you, and you're worth nothing to us.
I think a clear distinction, though, between the examples that we've provided in this one is that those actors passed away unexpectedly and in the middle of projects.
Yeah.
This is a case where the person has been dead for over
half a century. Half a century.
Yeah, pretty much. So I just think...
And it's a project he was not involved with beforehand, and it's not a historical project, so he has no involvement with it to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah. So why bring him into this? Because he can make money off it.
It's clear, though, that the public is not in favor of it, because Twitter is filled, or all day, I think, has been just articles and tweets about why this should not be done. But
I'm glad everybody else feels the
end of
same
the
way,
day,
because I
though-
think that could discourage them from doing it.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure once the first footage from this movie comes out, it's going to promote more discussion. And in the case of the filmmakers, it's what they want, probably, because it's people talking about their movie, publicity. It's free publicity, actually.
You know, even if it's negative, it's still publicity, sadly.
Good news, bad news, still news. At least in this case of the movie. Not necessarily for everything, but...
No, but
yeah. That has been our episode for the week.
don't do it. That's all I have to say.
Way to end on a feel-good note.
Yeah,
We should have
note.
stopped on Jojo Rabbit, the Holocaust movie.
man.
Nice.
Can they just, what's next? Paul Walker's gonna be recreated?
I mean,
I'm surprised they haven't tried that already. They're still
with
doing Fast and
the
Furious.
Fast and Furious
They
movies?
They
Yeah.
shouldn't. They should not do that. But
they tastefully wrapped up the Paul Walker situation. I think.
They did a very good job with that. I commend them for that. And I'm
Thank
not
you.
a Fast and Furious fan, but they did a good job.
I agree.
Hopefully we're not CGI.
For all
creations for this
eventually for our kids, our great grandkids, they'll bring us back to life so we can be there for their greatest moments of Christmas, Halloween, all the special
Yeah,
days.
but would we really be there? I'll end it on that.
No.
A nice ambiguous note.
On that note, you've been listening to Real Talk on WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will talk to you, I guess, because we won't see you. But we will talk to you next Wednesday, same time. Have a great weekend. And, yeah, that's pretty much it.